Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're making egg and veggie kimbap or gimbap. To start this dish, I have 2 cups of sushi rice, giving this a really good rinse until the water runs clear. As I've mentioned before, if I'm making a cup of rice, I'll use my dulcet. Anything more than that, I have to grab a larger pot. But I'm happy to announce I am now the proud owner of a rice cooker thanks to my mom. And this rice cooker has helpful markings to show how much water to add for the amount of rice and type of rice that you're cooking. Now I'm going to add a little less water than this recommends because I don't want a super sticky rice for our gimbap. So now we are going to set this to the sushi rice setting, press go, and it's going to not only cook the rice, but keep it warm up to 12 hours. While that's cooking, we can work on the rest of our ingredients. So I have 2 large bunches of spinach, which may seem like a lot, but as you know, if you cook with spinach, it kind of disappears as you cook it. We're going to take off that root end and give this a really good rinse because a lot of grit likes to hide in spinach and we don't want to bite down on any dirt. Once that's nicely rinsed, we can pop this into simmering water. We're only going to blanch this for about a minute. We don't want to cook this to death, and it's going to take very little time to blanch this really tender green. After about a minute, we're going to pull this out and put this directly into ice water. This is going to do a number of things. It's going to stop the cooking process, lock in that beautiful bright green color, and cool down our spinach quickly. After all our spinach is cooked, we can start squeezing out all that excess water. Spinach is mostly made up of water, so there's a lot locked into this leaf. So give this a really good squeeze. It's a great way to take out stress or tension. And you can see how little spinach is left over. So now we're going to season this with a teaspoon of kosher salt and a teaspoon of sesame oil. We're going to give this a really good mix until everything is coated and seasoned, and we're going to set this aside until we're ready to use it. Next up, we need about 1½ carrots cut into matchsticks, and the easiest way I've found to do this, and I've mentioned this before, is to cut the carrot on a long bias. That way you end up with this nice flat long disc that you can chop up into matchsticks. I used about 1½ of the carrots. Now I want to saute these a little bit, so I'm going to do this over medium heat and a teaspoon of sesame oil and a pinch of salt. We don't want to cook all of the raw flavor out, we just want to tenderize this a little bit, so only about 2 minutes in the pan. While we're over here, we might as well do our eggs as well. I have 3 eggs. I'm seasoning with 1/2 tablespoon of soy sauce and 1 tablespoon of mirin. Beating this up really nicely until that's all emulsified. And we're going to cook this over low heat. You want low heat with eggs. You don't want to burn your eggs and overcook them. And we're kind of doing a flat omelet here. So just lift up those edges and let that raw egg flow underneath. And when you get ready to flip your egg over, at that point you can shut off the heat because that residual heat will cook the rest of your egg. Once your egg is cooked, we can bring it over to our workbench and start cutting this into strips. Next up, I have 2 Kirby cucumbers. You could also use Persian cucumbers. Chopping these in half and then into matchsticks as well. There are no exact measurements for this recipe. It really depends on how many rolls you plan on making. Last but not least, this alien looking thing is a pickled Korean radish. Now I don't need the whole thing, so I'm going to chop off a nice healthy chunk. We're going to chop this up into planks and then into matchsticks as well. This is such a beautiful looking vegetable. It looks like little jewels. If you've never tried this before, it's a little funky, a little sweet, a little vinegary. It's used a lot in Korean food and it's really quite delicious. Now this is a hangari. If you watched my last video, I had mentioned I didn't own one, so I finally splurged and got one. I think in that last video I said these were made of cedar. They're made of cypress. We're going to tip in our cooked rice, and you can see what a beautiful job that rice cooker did. This rice is absolutely perfect. We're going to season with 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, and this hangari is going to absorb any extra moisture. We're going to go in with our rice paddle and start cutting that seasoning in. This is going to separate the rice, help release the steam and the moisture. And then you should taste this and add any more salt if you think you need it. Now we are ready to assemble, and you're going to need a sushi mat. These come in plastic or wood. We're also going to need a sheet of nori, which is roasted seaweed, and you want to put the shiny side down onto your mat. I do recommend having a bowl of water handy as well, so your hands don't stick to your rice. So we're going to ladle on a nice healthy serving of rice, wet our fingertips, and we're going to start flattening this out into an even layer, leaving a 1/4 inch gap at the end farthest away from you. Add more rice as needed until it covers all of your nori sheet except for that little 1/4 inch at the end. I have never made sushi or gimbap before, so we're going to learn how to roll this together, so wish me luck. Next, we're going to add our fillings. So we have a little egg here. If you wanted to keep this vegan, you could replace the egg with tofu, and there are vegetarian option soy sauces out there as well. Next up goes a little layer of spinach, some of our beautiful bright orange carrots, our fresh cucumber, and last but not least, these little jewels of Korean radish. Now to roll this, we have to lift up that entire end, tucking in the filling as we go. And I learned that you have to apply even pressure as you're going and roll this as tightly as possible. Take your time. You do this at your own pace. We're all learning how to do this together at this point. I have to tell you that I was actually initially very shocked that I managed to roll this on the first try. So we're going to use a sharp knife to cut through this, and that is a gorgeous cross-section. So you want to cut this into little discs. I do recommend wetting your knife blade in between so it doesn't stick to the rice and squish down your beautifully rolled gimbap. You get a nice, beautiful disc this way. Now let's go ahead and give this a taste. I'm going to taste the 2 tail ends. I did make a sauce. I'll put the ingredients in the description box below. You get a nice little subtle hint of that roasted seaweed. The rice is cooked to perfection. You get the crunchiness from the carrot, the freshness from that spinach and cucumber, the savoriness of the egg, and that funkiness from that Korean radish. But this is absolutely delicious. And I'm really amazed that this turned out, and I hope you all try to make it as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a like. If you loved it, subscribe and hit that notification bell because I put out new videos every Thursday. Thank you again, and until next time, happy cooking.